Welcome. Good to have you. Why don't we just jump right in? Why don't you tell us a bit about what Powerhouse Dynamics offers?
Sure. So when you get a facility like this, or a large office building, or big box retail, an energy management system, building management system, they're ubiquitous. The problem we set out to solve is the fact that in smaller facilities, restaurants, small box retail, as we got started, the penetration of energy management systems was well under 10%. Because these are much smaller facilities, the systems that were on the market were way too expensive, way too complex to use. And to give you an example of the difference in that type of facility, you go to a standard office building, there'll be a full-time facility manager in the facility. A typical 100-store restaurant or retail chain spread over 6 states has one facility person. And so the problem is really quite different. And we created a system to, we call it an energy and asset management system that controls the major equipment, it monitors everything, analyzes things, and helps these facilities lower their energy costs, lower their equipment maintenance costs, improve guest comfort, increase staff productivity. So it does a lot of different things in these smaller facilities. And if I could just add a couple of things, so a couple of misimpressions some people have. Although it's small facilities, it's a very large market. 90% of the buildings in this country, the commercial buildings, are under 25,000 square feet, which is our target. 70% are under 10,000, which is where most of our customers are. And we're not talking about small business. Typically, those are not the folks we serve. We serve large businesses, Arby's, Wendy's, Ann Taylor, Shell. Those are our customers that have large chains of these smaller facilities.
Great. You mentioned the multi-site enterprises that you're dealing with, and you mentioned that typically you may have one energy manager. I know a big focus of how you developed your product has been you realize that person's probably not sitting behind a desk in front of a computer all day. They're running around. So can you talk a little bit about what that interface is like?
Sure. So that's exactly right. The facility manager is not sitting at a computer. The store manager is not sitting at a computer. So we took a mobile-first strategy where you can do most things on your mobile phone, but it's very much a push strategy. We don't expect anybody to log in unless they get an alert that says there's a problem, unless they have a report set up. So for example, a facility manager can set up a report that says, show me every piece of HVAC equipment that had a temperature differential between supply and return beyond X, which suggests there may be a problem. He'll get that pushed as a push notification to his phone. He'll get a list of that equipment and know which ones he has to deal with to get ahead of the curve. So very much push, very much exception-based reporting, very much fully automated, telling him what he needs to know so he doesn't have to wade through lots of data and try to interpret it and figure out what it means.
Great. And I guess besides you talk about building energy and controls, guest comfort, et cetera. What types of assets generally are kind of fall in what you guys will control?
Sure. So it's almost always HVAC, heating and cooling. That's usually the biggest load in our customer base, restaurant and retail and convenience stores. Refrigeration, we may control some of it. For example, in a restaurant, they have refrigerated prep tables that they use during the day, and at night they're supposed to turn it off because they take everything out. Only they rarely remember to actually turn those things off. They rarely remember to turn off exhaust hoods that are left on all night. So those are the kinds of things that are common in a restaurant environment. In retail, it's HVAC and lighting. So we're rolled out across Ann Taylor. We're controlling all their HVAC. We're controlling all their lighting. We're monitoring all of the HVAC in particular, looking for anomalies and problems which happen pretty much on a pretty regular basis.
So I know you said it's rules-based and exception reporting. How much of it is, how much flexibility is there? Is it just, the centralized person has kind of full control over the rules? How much can there be flexibility for the individual locations? How does that interplay kind of work?
Good question. So there is a combination of enterprise functionality and then the ability to tailor things for individual facilities or even for individuals within that facility. So let me give you some examples. You can set up templates for heating and cooling set points. You can set one up for an enterprise and push it out to every location. You can set up different ones maybe for different climates. They can be tied to store hours so that you don't have to worry if one is open for breakfast and another one isn't, or one store starts at 9 o'clock and another at noon. But you can also create individual schedules locally depending on what the rules are. You can change things, again, within limits. We give a lot of flexibility, so perhaps a corporate policy will be a store manager can adjust the temperature plus or minus 2 degrees when a customer is there, but you can't adjust it at all overnight, so they get locked out from making changes. Similarly, you can set up alerts centrally and push them out, but individuals can tweak and tailor those alerts if they want to see different things or set up different alerts than you may have set up on an enterprise-wide basis. So we give them a lot of flexibility in that regard.
Great. Taking a little bit of a different direction, you've talked a little bit, or you talked about the sub 25,000 square foot kind of footprint. You talked a bit about examples in the, I guess, the quick serve restaurant and kind of the retail space. What other types of facilities do you kind of see, your solution kind of having applicability for?
Yeah, interesting question. So, I mean, those are what we focused on. By the way, interestingly, we're in cell towers as well. That was not an application we thought about. There are over 300,000 cell towers in this country, and when the HVAC goes down, that's a problem, and they want to be warned about it before it happens. So that's one example. Our system's been implemented in some larger facilities as well. So, for example, in hotels, specifically to focus on the restaurants in those hotels or the common areas in those hotels, some hospitals, some office buildings, where the focus is a subset more on the monitoring than the control. Our system's not designed to control the larger facilities. And what's been kind of an interesting development, so for those of you who've heard the expression Internet of Things, it's a big buzzword nowadays. That's what our product does. We're sensing things, temperature or energy use, and pulling that data up to the cloud. We've expanded on that with adding, so what we have is we have an energy monitor that will monitor energy, and then a generic sensor hub, we call it, that can monitor temperature, it can monitor humidity, it can monitor carbon dioxide. All these things talk to our gateway wirelessly. And we've added an embedded version of that sensor hub that is now being integrated directly with equipment manufacturers, so kitchen equipment, HVAC equipment, water equipment, and others. And that's created the ability to integrate into all sorts of facilities that use that same kind of equipment. So, for example, we rolled out a smart kitchen module, food safety module, aimed at restaurants and convenience stores. Same functionality could work in food processing facilities, in larger facilities that are interested in tracking. In fact, we've just about to roll out our first application in health clinics where we're actually monitoring the medicine as well in that particular environment. So there are any number of types of facilities that those parts of our solution can serve as well.
Great. You touched on something there I wanted to ask you a little more about. So obviously when we think building energy management system, first off you think about there's going to be some sort of energy reduction savings there, but if you could, and you started to touch on it a little bit there, but some of these non-energy benefits in terms of refrigeration and food safety and those sorts of things, what are some of those other things that you guys were able to kind of achieve?
Sure. So actually, I didn't even talk about the energy saving side, so I will talk about that a little bit and then segue into the others. We typically see about a 10 to 20% reduction in energy use in a facility. There's also a related savings in maintenance costs because of the proactive alerting about equipment problems and the diagnostics that are built into the system. In the some of the other areas, and there are some savings of time. Food safety difficult to measure the benefit of that. You know it, obviously, if you want to keep things safe. But there's actually a significant dollar savings as well. So what our system does in that particular case, it automates food safety reporting, which is now a very time-consuming, if it's done, error-prone system where people have to manually take temperature readings and record it and save it. We learned a new term that goes on in a lot of places. It's called pencil whipping, which is when, amazingly enough, these temperatures get recorded without benefit of any temperature reader, and usually about 3 hours before the time that's reported. Unfortunately, that happens more often than we'd like to see. I think that's beginning to change. So we have customers that are recognizing the value of making sure this data is captured accurately, and saved.
Well, having spent some time with your team, a little bit of time, I know there's a strong focus on getting feedback from customers and kind of incorporating that into next iterations, next releases of what you're doing. Could you maybe talk a little bit about that process, and then maybe talk about one or two things that are kind of coming down the pipe in terms of new features?
Okay. Well, so yeah, I mean, you're right, Scott. We do listen to our customers, both actively in terms of reaching out to them, and of course when they come to us. We have a team that gets together on a monthly basis, planning out the roadmap and making decisions about what gets incorporated based on that feedback and the priority of that feedback. We do have a reputation of being pretty responsive to what customers are looking for. And so I'll give you an example of one thing that we did. It turned out to be a really great little module that we've added at the request of one customer. This was Arby's. Interestingly enough, and I don't know about those of you here from companies that have all equipment, our customers, for the most part, and I don't think a lot of you are that different, have no idea what equipment they have in their facilities. They have an asset list in the finance department, and they think they may have 3 rooftop units, but they don't know where they're from or how old they are. And we created an asset, both inventory app that it's a mobile app that you can use to capture properties, make, model, serial number, and condition. So in the case of piece of HVAC equipment, it could be the coil condition, whether there's standing water, and so on. Made it very easy to capture that. In the case of Arby's, we've now got there's 1,000 corporate-owned Arby's we're in, so we have 3,000 rooftop units of air conditioning equipment, HVAC equipment, and 2,000 walk-in ovens and freezers that we captured. And one of the things that we did that they hadn't asked for, but we thought would be interesting, is we created a scoring system that scores that equipment from 0 to 100 based on age, condition, energy use per day, which we're tracking. In the case of HVAC equipment, refrigerant type, Freon is being phased out. There's still a lot of equipment out there with Freon. It's going to be very hard to maintain in a few years. And interestingly enough, Arby's was so excited about that feature that they had a capital replacement program. They took our data, and you can filter by manufacturer and plot it on a map and filter by region and so on. They took the 350 worst scores, and that's the equipment that they replaced. And they basically said they never had any basis for making these decisions before. And this data, we weren't intending it to be used quite that literally, but we're very excited that they were. And this is another module that's available. It doesn't matter what the building size is. It's just something to capture and track all the equipment that you have.
Great. Well, listen, exciting stuff. Thank you for your time. I know we'll have you here throughout the day for people to chat with.
Great. Well, thank you very much.